For 250 years, the Japanese government didn't just ban Christianity. They hunted it. They posted bounties. Cash rewards for turning in your neighbor. Your cousin. Your own father. They built a system so thorough, so suffocating, that every single family in Japan, every one, was legally required to register with a Buddhist temple. Not because they were Buddhist. Because the government needed a way to track who was secretly not. And if you got caught, they didn't just execute you. They made it a lesson. Public crucifixions. Torture designed not to kill you fast, but to make you talk, to give up names, locations, the woman 3 villages over who was humming something that sounded a little too much like a hymn. And still, people kept praying. In fishing villages so small they don't show up on most maps. In the dark. In basements. In rooms where the walls had ears and the neighbors had incentive. They kept going. Japan stopped the persecution in 1873. Christianity became legal. Churches started opening up. Nobody was watching anymore. These villages stayed hidden anyway. Not because they were scared. Not because they didn't know it was over. But because what they had built in the dark, over 2.5 centuries of silence, had become something that didn't fit neatly into any church, any bishop's authority, any official religious category on earth. Their name is Kakure Kirishitan. The hidden Christians. And they are still out there. The Shimabara Peninsula. Western Japan. A coastline so rugged and isolated it looks like the land itself was trying to stay hidden. This is where it started. In 1597, 26 Christians, priests, brothers, ordinary people, were marched to Nagasaki and crucified on a hill overlooking the harbor. The government wanted a message sent. What they got instead was martyrdom. And martyrdoms, historically, do not end movements. They fuel them. The crackdown that followed was unlike anything in the religious persecution playbook. Japan didn't just outlaw Christianity. They engineered a society specifically designed to make it impossible. The temple registration system. The fumi-e, bronze or wooden plates with the image of Christ or the Virgin Mary pressed into them. Every year, in every village, every person was required to step on the image. Publicly. In front of officials. If you hesitated, even for a second, that hesitation was noted. Your grandfather stepped on that plate. Your father stepped on that plate. You step on that plate. And then you go home, close the door, and teach your children the prayers your grandfather whispered in the dark. That is not a weakness. That is one of the most psychologically brutal forms of resistance ever documented. The communities that survived went underground in ways that were genuinely ingenious. Crosses carved into the backs of Buddhist statues, visible only if you knew to flip it over. Prayers embedded inside traditional folk songs, indistinguishable from anything a non-Christian family might sing. The Ave Maria disguised as a lullaby. They didn't just hide their faith. They encoded it. And when the priests were killed and no new ones could enter Japan, they built a faith without clergy. Without sacraments. Without anyone to tell them if they were doing it right. They just kept going. Quick one, if this is the kind of content you want more of, hit like. And drop your country in the comments, genuinely want to know where this is reaching. By the time Japan opened its doors to the outside world in the 1860s, something extraordinary had already happened in those fishing villages. A generation had been born that had never seen a priest. Never held a Bible. Never heard the word Christianity spoken out loud in daylight. And yet, they knew the prayers. They knew the rituals. They knew which statue had a cross on its back and which songs were actually something else entirely. 250 years of underground transmission. Parent to child. Whispered in the dark. Not one generation broke the chain. When French missionaries completed a small church in Nagasaki in 1865, they were not expecting what happened next. Within weeks, villagers from the surrounding countryside began showing up at the door. Cautiously. Looking over their shoulders. And then one elderly woman walked up to a priest and said something that stopped him cold. "We have the same heart as you." She then asked 3 questions. Did he have a wife? Did the priests in Rome follow a celibate life? Did they venerate the Blessed Mother? She was testing him. After 2.5 centuries underground, these communities had developed their own authentication protocol. Their own way of verifying whether the person standing in front of them was safe. The priest passed the test. Because what the missionaries found was not a degraded or corrupted version of Christianity. It was a living faith, altered, yes, syncretic, yes, but alive in ways that formal institutional religion almost never is. The prayers had mutated into something unrecognizable to Rome. The rituals had absorbed Buddhist and Shinto elements so deeply they were inseparable. When the church told them to come back, most of them said no. That refusal is the most extraordinary thing in this entire story. The Japanese government hunted them for 2.5 centuries. Tortured them. Crucified them. Built an entire bureaucratic system specifically designed to erase them. And they survived all of it. Then the persecution ended. The church came back. The door opened. And the people who had kept the faith alive through all of that, said they didn't need the door anymore. They had built something the church couldn't give them back. Today, the Kakure Kirishitan still exists, but barely. The communities are old. The young have left for cities. The priests who would have carried the tradition forward were never trained because the tradition never had priests. What remains is concentrated on a handful of islands in Nagasaki Prefecture, Ikitsuki Island, the Goto Islands, places so remote they feel like the hiding never fully ended. The rituals they still practice look like nothing else on earth. No church building. No cross on the wall. Prayers are recited in Japanese so archaic most modern Japanese speakers cannot understand a single word. Sung to melodies that have been passed down so many times they no longer resemble the original hymns they once were. They call their leader not a priest but an oshosha, a ritual specialist who inherited the role the way you inherit a family trade. No ordination. No seminary. Just a father passing something to a son. The last generation that fully knows the old prayers is dying. And the history books, the ones that cover Japanese religion in careful academic detail, give the Kakure Kirishitan maybe a paragraph. Sometimes less. There is a community on Ikitsuki Island right now. Elderly men and women who carry 2.5 centuries of encoded faith in their memory. When they go, it goes with them. Quick one. If this is the kind of content you want more of, hit like. And drop your country in the comments, genuinely want to know where this is reaching. If you want to understand how a different community kept their entire identity alive underground, not for 2 centuries but for 2,000 years, in rivers, in secret, with a ritual so sacred that outsiders were forbidden from even witnessing it. That story is right here. They've secretly baptized in rivers for 2,000 years, nobody knows they exist.